1, 2, 3. Good. Okay. Just going to see a few more people coming in, so I'll wait till they get a chance to sit down, and then I'll get started. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I know it's a little late in the day, so I appreciate the effort of will it will be to stay awake. So, what is Fedora .next? Fedora .next is a plan that has been evolving over the last about a year, maybe a little longer than that. And it's been an effort to try and address some of the issues that Fedora sees with its declining contributor base. And actually, I don't know how many of you were here for Donnie's talk earlier today. Okay, a few of you. He had some great metrics, and I wish I'd had a chance to steal them from him before I got up on stage. But he did some interesting analysis of various distros and how much they're being talked about on Hacker News, on Linux Journal, and on Google Trends. And the results were not good for Fedora. And we've had a sense of this for a long time, that Fedora has not been doing, has just not been the exciting new place to do stuff. It's not, it's kind of, we've gotten the impression that the community kind of views us as a commodity. We're just that layer that works and nobody cares about it anymore. So with the Fedora .next initiative, we're trying to bring a little bit of that excitement back, still to those platform layers, but remind people that there's still a lot of work to be done there and still a lot of opportunity to make something better. So part of the, one of the big pieces of the Fedora .next initiative is that Fedora historically has been one gigantic collection of packages that usually installs about every 6 months. We do a release, and on that day it's tested, and it's always the latest bits, generally with as little modification as possible, just to get them onto a system. There really hasn't been a driving goal of Fedora except for get as much stuff into Fedora as possible. So we stopped and we took a look at this, and we decided that's probably not going to sustain us, and it's obviously not doing it already. So what we really need is we need to take a step back and figure out what is it that we can do that would give Fedora some definition and a goal. So we took a look at, this was at FudCon in Lawrence, Kansas. We had a long discussion, I think it was most of a day, with a lot of people just listing out Fedora's strengths and weaknesses. And what we found were that most of the time, our weaknesses were when we were trying to solve the needs of two different groups at the same time. That it really might make sense for Fedora to be willing to address different groups with a different deliverable, a different product is what we're calling them. So we took a look and we decided that we were going to break Fedora install media, Fedora as what you can get off of our website, into three basic concepts. Something we're calling Fedora Workstation, something we're calling Fedora Server, and something we're calling Fedora Cloud. So the first and arguably the most contentious right now is the Fedora Workstation. About 2 weeks ago, we had the conclusion of our first round of Fedora .next deliverables, and what those were was we organized a groups of people to manage each of these products and come up with essentially a PRD. Not a marketing document, but a set of goals and driving principles for their version of Fedora. So the Fedora Workstation, what we realized was that one thing that Fedora needs to be better at is helping people build Fedora. We need a platform that they can use that is the easiest and most effective way to do development and packaging and deployment on Fedora. So we tasked the Fedora Workstation group to figure out what kind of target users, what kind of things can we do to enhance the developer experience on Fedora. So they decided to select 4 target users, 4 sets of people for which this is what the workstation product will care about. And they're on the board. I'm not going to read it at you because that's lame. But this is something that historically the desktop spins in Fedora have always been technology spins. They've always been about, well, there's the GNOME upstream, and there's the KDE upstream, and there's the XFCE upstream, and there's the whatever favorite window manager you've got upstream. And we're going to just stick all those in Fedora. We're going to give a different spin so you can install whichever one you want. And that's as much of it as we're going to care about. And that's not enough. We need Fedora to be producing some sort of a workstation that you can use to get something done, and not just be a technology preview for the upstream work. Upstreams do great work, but they don't do integration work. And that's where a distribution can make a difference. The Fedora server is, this is the one that I'm most heavily involved with. This is, I'm on the working group for the Fedora server. And how many here are familiar with the pets and cattle metaphor before I? Okay, far too few of you, so I'll give it to you this way. Historically, not historically, but there are 2 ways that you can manage services in your environment, and they're generally referred to by pets or cattle. When you have a pet, you take care of it. If it gets sick, you take it to the vet. You do whatever you can to help it. With cattle, your cow goes dry. You have a hamburger, and you get another cow. So, with the pets versus cattle metaphor, the idea is your critical infrastructure, those things that you cannot live without, that have to be rock solid and always there, things like your DNS server and possibly your domain controller, these are probably going to be your pets. These are the ones that you're going to keep carefully cultivated and make sure that they are always up and running. Possibly your infrastructure as a service infrastructure will end up being, we hope, Fedora server. So what this is it's Fedora's way of developing the next generation of critical infrastructure, the sort of thing that's going to become RHEL server, the thing that's going to become CentOS 8 eventually. This is the technology that we're going to focus on in Fedora server, and we're also going. But it's not just going to be make sure that the platform is rock solid. We're also going to be building infrastructure to do managed deployments of common tasks, things like, okay, that machine over there is now a domain controller. You tell it what domain it is, and that's basically all the information you need. It goes off and is that machine. Over here, you've got your, you just stand up a Postgres SQL server. Here's the credentials for it, and now you can start deploying applications against it. These are lofty goals, and they're going to be very difficult to actually implement, and we're actively going to be requesting help on ideas for how to get these things done. But I'm going to move on because I don't want to actually spend too much time talking about the individual pieces here, because I want this to be a workshop. So I'm going to get on to the Fedora Cloud is the cattle side of our pets versus cattle metaphor, and it's going to be a series of small images built in a variety of different infrastructure as a service systems, things as deployable systems to run OpenShift, to run OpenStack, to run Fedora in an Amazon environment, Fedora in a Bitnami environment. These are the sort of things that Fedora Cloud should be servicing. There's going to be a heavy focus on how do we serve DevOps needs, how do we serve the case where we want to have these disposable machines that we can just cut and paste, and if you get a sudden spike in load because you got on the front page of Slashdot, that you can just call up your provider and say, spin up 10 more of those. So with that in mind, like I said, we put together this plan, and we had our first PRDs that went through the Fedora Engineering Steering Committee for approval 2 weeks ago or last week, a little of both. And we've pretty much settled on that these are the goals that we want this chunk of Fedora to be focusing on, and now we're into our execution phase, our planning phase, really, where we figure out how it is we're going to do that. So I'd really like to engage the audience for some ideas, some plans, things that we should do, things that we should watch out for, horror stories in the past of other people that have tried this and failed, what they did wrong. So that's where I'm going to go. But first, actually, I want to ask, could I get a show of hands? Anyone who in here was served on one of the working groups that had a PRD submitted? So. Okay, actually, a surprising number of you, about 8, I think. So I'm going to applaud you because you guys did a lot of hard work with very limited resources and very limited constraints. So you guys did a fantastic job. So that is basically all I have for a presentation. What I'm looking for now is start shouting things at me. Sorry, Joe, I know that's going to be hard to record, but.
We do have a microphone that we can use. So if you can just organize your questions by row. Gentleman in the awesome shirt right there. Just pass this over. You have to tell me where you got that after the presentation.
My name is Peter Lemenkov, and I'd like to ask, I think, a very simple question. You told us that you gave some metrics about possible decline of Fedora community base, but why you don't ask the Fedora community?
Well, it's very difficult to ask someone who isn't there if they're not there anymore.
Well, maybe you can ask them about potential issues which could prevent them to move further.
Yes, and we listen to our community, and we do have a pretty active, if self-selected group of people who gripe on the devel list regularly.
Another one flaw is what you digging for metrics in the wrong place, because we have already a lot of metrics. For example, we have Fedora accounting servers. You could try to dig it.
We've done that.
Yes,
we have done that. Part of the problem is that there are a lot of accounts in Fedora account service that are ancient, that haven't been touched in a decade. There are a lot of, we can't necessarily just go by package commit metrics because that doesn't tell us who's working on the websites, who's working on it. It's very difficult to get a clear picture of the decline. We have had a number of people do a fair number of metrics on the system on this. And universally, they all show a sharp decline. They all vary on how what they estimate the number of active contributors are, but they all agree that they are less than half of what they were 6 years ago.
Well, you should ask those who stopped working for the reasons. I do believe you're doing it the wrong way, because Googling something using Google Trends is not an answer. I mean, it's just, it's not very well. And another one question. You told us about 3 potential products on top of Fedora, based on Fedora packages base. Will be the same packages used in all these 3 products?
Yes.
As a Fedora packager, I'm very concerned about additional work you are
as of right now, FESCO has resolved to stick with the one universal package set, while allowing the individual products may be allowed to manually configure packages in different ways, but they must all be using the same bits, or at least be building sub-packages from them if they need to make variants.
Can I participate? I'm Alexandra Fedorova, and I want to ask if you think the reason why contributor base of Fedora is declining is probably the idea that people don't see they can influence Fedora right now, because they think that Fedora is moving in its own way, and any kind of initiative they have, they cannot apply it in Fedora. And this PRD requirements something, it makes it worse, because right now this...
Well, these weren't... You know what? Sure, absolutely. This is a discussion, not just a Q&A.
So, stuff gets done by the people that show up. And I find that the people who often have the attitude of, I don't know if I can influence that because it doesn't look friendly enough, are often not ones that do a lot. that are waiting. If you're waiting in open source for an invitation, I mean, we have issued them, and that's how I got involved in the PRD, because I'm relatively new to Fedora, and that's how I got involved in the CloudSig, because I came over from working on CloudStack and got involved in the CloudSig, and I'm like, can I do this? And, Matt sent out an invitation to work on the CloudSig workgroup, and I shot up a hand and I said, I will do it.
Yeah, I neglected to mention that in the original presentation, that all of this PRD work was done after an open call for participation with anyone with anyone at all who thought they might have something to add to it. This was not as some members of our community assert a Red Hat dominated and ordered process. I'm sorry? Well, when I say making plans for a year, I mean that these have been discussed at every conference we've been to. And I know that not everybody gets to conferences, but we do always take it back to the mailing lists afterwards. So. No. What I said was that for the last couple of years, year and a half, we have been monitoring the decline. As of about FUDCon Lawrence, we have started trying to put together a plan to address it. So that was what, about a year ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, could you pass her the mic? I can't hear her. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's just for people outside of very Fedora core group, which is like Red Hatters and some other well-known persons in Fedora community. It's hard for them to start doing something in Fedora. For example, there is this Razer Qt group with their own plans for desktop environment, but right now they don't fit in this workstation PRD, and this is hard for them to get into this special interest group or something because no one knows about them. How should they start? How should they force people to listen to them?
Well, the best way to start would actually be to send a message to Fedora Announce. If you announce, hey, I want to form a SIG. Here's the things we want to accomplish. That'll get through the queue.
Yeah, but
that'll get approved.
The problem is that now this workstation group is made from GNOME developers. And no one outside can...
Actually, is there anyone here from the workstation working group, first of all, because I'd rather have them answer this, but anyone of the people that raised their hands earlier that want to admit they work for this group?
I don't mean this is a bad idea. I mean that we should care about how open this process is, not from the point of we publishing everything, but also from the point that there are people who don't have prior experience with Fedora. They don't have this level of, they are not known for Fedora community.
The only answer I can give there is that the only way to get experience in the community is to participate in the community. I have never met anyone in the Fedora community. Well, okay. There are about 2 people in the Fedora community that are not welcoming to new contributions.
But I mean, this.
I was speaking in jest, but in general, I mean, if you come forward and say, I'm going to do this, everyone's going to do this. Yeah, I think we've got no offense, but we're kind of limiting the participation here.
I think they're also saying a little bit of the opposite, right? Which is that the workstation group is largely dominated by non-traditional,
It's Heiko from the Cloud Working Group. I have a question for the audience.
I was going to say I wouldn't actually necessarily say that. I selected a few people for the server working group that didn't have a long history with Fedora, but clearly had an interest in making sure that Fedora was a powerful server platform. For example, Jim Perrin of CentOS, is a member of the server working group, and that was prior to the Red Hat CentOS merger, but. I wanted to, when I selected, initially the working groups were selected by a representative from FESCO, and then they formed their own election process for how they would select members after that. So my initial selection, I picked a number of people, both with experience and without. I have people on the server working group that are relatively junior ambassadors, because I wanted to have people working on this that are coming at it from the perspective of how am I going to introduce people to Fedora. So I think these groups can work, and they don't have to be all, insiders. And I think it depends. It really depends on the way the groups end up formulating themselves. Their respective governance rules will allow them to filter users out and in individually. But if any of them are not listening to external contribution, send them to me. I will have a word with them.
Okay. I have a question, but it's to the audience. Who isn't here a Fedora developer or an employee of Red Hat? Raise your hand. No, the reverse. People who are not contributing to Fedora today and not working to Red Hat, raise your hand. Just a quick census. Okay. Could you tell us what are you interested in? Are you interested in joining Fedora or bringing this experience to your own communities? Just asking, because I'm
or we're just looking for a room that had spare seats.
Okay, because I'm one of the working group monkeys, and I was interested in why people are coming here and what are their interests. Just out of curiosity. Thank you.
Did anybody want to answer, or trying to do another question?
Somebody want to be the first victim? Respondent.
Yeah.
You couldn't be more conveniently seated.
I will try just to answer why I'm here, and maybe it will help some or start some discussion. As my day job, I am full-time developer from some agency, whatever, and I use Fedora every day at work and also at home. Some time ago, I tried to just come in and solve a small problem I had. It was a small program that was lacking in the Fedora repository, and I tried to become to submit some package for that. But aside of Fedora and my full-time job, I have a lot of other activities, and just to have that small package that was a simple converter, I had to sign up a lot of stuff, to be active in trying or participate to the maintenance of other packages and so on and so on. At that time, I had a slow computer, so building stuff took a lot of time, and I just stopped because there was no way for me to just come with that small package and give it. I gave it. It's still there in my Git repository. The spec file is still there, but I cannot find a way to have that pushed in Fedora in a simple way. It was too much time for me. And with the working group, the proposal that I sometimes I follow up on the wiki or the mailing list and so on, my feeling is the same. If Fedora is not your full-time job, it becomes difficult to participate. If your only time is 1 hour per weekend, you're not welcome. It's difficult. Maybe you're welcome, but it's difficult to have your voice listened.
So before I got more involved in Fedora, I was doing work on patching FOSDEM, right? And that was my full-time job with Citrix, was doing that. And it is that is a problem that if you have an idea how to solve, I would love to hear, because it is time intensive to contribute to something like that. And that's not like Fedora doesn't want you, it's just, it does take time.
And I would like to mention that we do have a working group that is addressing this specific problem. There are 2 other working groups that aren't directly involved in the products, and those are the base design working group and the environments and stacks working group. The latter is The latter is also heavily involved in finding ways to layer things so that you can so that we can put stuff on top of Fedora in a more sensible way. One of these solutions that we've rolled out relatively recently is something we call Copper, which I think is a cool other package repository. It's our answer to Ubuntu's PPAs. A slightly different feature set, but essentially it allows a Fedora community member who has just has signed the FPCA, which just says, I won't do anything in Fedora that's illegal. To go and build an RPM that doesn't have to correspond to our packaging guidelines and offer it as in a side repo that people can go and install, and that we're encouraging as a means of as a first step to getting a package into Fedora, because if you get if people are using your side repo, somebody is going to want to pick it up and pull it in, even if you don't have the time to do it. And and it's also a good place for people to stick the next alpha or beta version of their package that isn't ready for Fedora, because we want to keep Fedora at least reasonably stable. We don't want it to be breaking constantly. So perhaps we put the experimental stuff in a side repo, which also again doesn't necessarily have to go through all of the mumbo jumbo of getting all of its dependencies into Fedora first, as a way to just get started in the community and get people excited about it without having to go through all of the hoops of our existing community. So I think that's a big step forward.
You keep talking about technical side of things. You keep talking about technical implementation, like with service as a PPA, but maybe we should organize a working group for mentoring and package review. So this could be like, it's more about person-to-person interactions, not about technical side of things.
If you would like to lead such an advance, no, I'm not joking. If you would like to lead such an advance, send a message to the list. I will see to it that people sign up.
Okay.
Because that is a very serious need, and it's one of the reasons why, I think 10 conferences a year we send someone to do a build your first RPM workshop to help people learn this stuff, and build and we have the ambassadors at all of these little stands and kiosks at all of these events, and that's to address that problem. And we do have a problem, but we don't really have an organizational skill for how to solve it.
What we might not want is somebody who just drops in a package and then runs away and never maintains it, really. So if you have not much time, it's probably
again, that's why I suggested something like the Copers, which is outside of Fedora proper, and if it's interesting enough that somebody wants it, it'll get pulled in.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. By the time you've gone through all the first steps, you must be dedicated, and we know this is a problem.
I'd like to turn the page a little bit. There's been a lot of discussion about pace, Fedora release cycles pace. Are we considering changing the pace within the Fedora Next? Because what I see when I compare server and cloud, then I see that cloud deserves maybe a faster pace while server deserves. So are we?
Those are things that are being discussed. The Fedora project as a whole will probably maintain a particular, its existing release cadence or adjust it very minimally. Whereas, yes, we may allow the products to do releases of their own, as long as they can provide the QE and RHEL-eng resources to do so at their own pace. One thing that's been suggested for the Fedora server, for example, is that we actually only do a full release every 2 years, whereas in the middle we just do essentially service packs and alphas of the next one. So there are discussions on how to do that while we maintain the cadence for the project, where the products may be allowed to do something a little different.
I tried to get edit rights on Bugzilla. I found it way too difficult for something as simple. I think you have to sign stuff and so on. I couldn't be bothered.
What do you mean by edit rights?
Triaging rights, that you can change everything that you want.
That, I can see why that would be difficult, primarily because that infrastructure isn't provided by the Fedora project. It's provided by Red Hat, and anyone with edit rights has access to potentially customer data, which is a risk. It's one of the reasons why we have on several occasions tried to break from that, but it's just too expensive manpower-wise.
You can have hidden products and at the same time just be able to change existing bugs and so on.
I'm not an expert in that domain, so I can't really answer that.
I try to make small changes to bugs. A few years ago, anyone could do that. Now, I don't know the process. It was way too complicated. I just stopped.
At the risk of sounding glib, file a bug.
Yeah, okay. But I'm now helping out at another distribution. I find it easier. So if you're asking, like, okay, why don't people contribute? And someone says, well, if
too much process is a very clearly identified problem with Fedora, and it's something we are going to be trying to address.
Hi. Still got a question back to the topic of Fedora NEXT. So for me, it's still not clear what the target of the whole process should be. Because right now it simply seems that you want to change the way installation goes, maybe in form of some different kind of spins or installation media. But I cannot see the big picture. You told me that might help to vitalize the community maybe, but from what we hear right now, we got several different problems or areas where we need work and love to do in order to get the community up and running, and this community problem from my point of view can hardly be fixed with this approach. So could you perhaps point out the big picture of what you see and what the influence might be, for example, for spins like the existing ones, like the KDE spin or so? Will they disappear, or
well, there's a lot of ongoing discussion on that specific topic on the devel list right now, but as far as the individual spins, what we're trying to do with the Fedora products is provide three distinct platforms. Our path here, we hope, is that first we want to make Fedora a more inviting place to be a user, because you never ever get a contributor who wasn't first a user. That just doesn't happen. So what we want to do is we want to, instead of having just these technology previews, we want to be able to say, you want to use Fedora because it's the best place to do Ruby on Rails development, because that's going to be one such focus. It's the best place to do the development of these top level stacks, which people are very interested in. So that's a target for the workstation, and we hope that we can use that to gain users, and then from users we start building our contributor base again. Similarly with the server, what we want to do is one of the things that I always cringe to hear is people are always saying, even on our own mailing lists, oh, you should never use Fedora as a server, it's not stable. That's actually not really that true, and there are a lot of people that are using Fedora as a server, both as pets and cattle. And it's just, this cargo cult mentality that Fedora isn't equipped for that is a problem, and by producing a product, we hopefully bring people back into realizing that that's a space we care about. And also, we can focus on making it the best place to do simple deployments, so that the small and medium businesses of the world can get their cheap, free, powerful open source solutions up without having to be a graybeard with 30 years of experience. So, and I think with that, and also basing it as this is also not just stable, but the technology preview for what's going to be in the long-term 10-year lifespan of the RHELs and CentOS is a little ways down the road. I want to be trying to build, to get the application developers, the people who want to do these serious deployments, to be working with us in the Fedora server, so that they get whatever it is that they're going to want to have in place to build on in 2 years. To do their big release, that we've already got it in place for them. And we want to be the place they prep all of that stuff so they can launch when the CentOS 8 does. I would actually rather have Matthew give the description of the cloud for me, because he's kind of our guru on that. So, if you don't mind.
I was thinking about some of the other things because of that. It switched my mind. Yeah. So the Fedora Cloud image is partly, you see things like CoreOS getting a lot of excitement, and Fedora has had a pretty good cloud guest image in Amazon EC2 and downloadable for OpenStack for a while in EC2 and downloadable for a couple of releases now, and it's pretty good, but I see that the usage and download numbers on it are a lot lower than its actual quality and utility. I'll put it that way. And so it'd be kind of nice to have some things that people can see, okay, here I see a reason to use Fedora for this, and plug this in, and it'll be a really good Docker container host. So if you're doing Docker container stuff, Fedora is going to be one of the best places to do that, because we're going to have a SE Linux-based security layer isolating containers from each other that something like CoreOS won't have. So we'll have some, like, this is why you should use Fedora in the cloud, and that's part of the answer there. And I think that's one of the things we kind of needed as we were going forward, because we had that cloud image, but nobody was really thinking about it at release time for Fedora, and somebody, release engineering had to like quick spin it up at the last minute as an afterthought as part of the release process. So having the working group sort of as a way to formalize that and to get people other than me doing the work really is also part of the other thing too, because it becomes a single point of failure, and it's nice to engage other community people in doing that as well. I was trying to think about some of the things you said earlier too. One of the things I've been hearing in the last couple weeks is that on the one hand, everything has been decided in a back room and there's nowhere to plug in, and there's this vast conspiracy to push something through. And then on the other hand, you guys don't have any specifics. What are you guys talking about? And the actual truth is, the reason there aren't any specifics, or not so many specifics, is because there was no secret backroom plan drawn up with a list of specifics. So we're talking to people and trying to actually figure out what the specifics are. And yeah, and this has been going on Fedora Develop mailing list and stuff all in the open. Sometimes the FESCO IRC chats are reading along IRC logs, so that's open, but it's kind of hidden. So, but as things become more specific, I think we'll have more public communications about things too.
They list issues which should be resolved, but nobody listens to us. Nobody listens to Fedora users. I mean, people just jump out from nowhere with some kind of secret plans, as we see.
Right.
Significant issues which exist for years, for example, entirely complicated first step which would require to join Fedora community. It's still there. Our lucky build system is still there. Our non-existent integration between Git and RPM is still there. Bugzilla, which is not integrated with anything, is still there. I mean, I can say a lot, but nobody listens to us. I mean, it really drives me angry, because these issues are really significant. These issues exist for years. These issues, people know them, all of us know for these issues, but people from the stage are talking about Google Trends, whatever else, but not about these particular issues which are real stoppers from new users to try to join the community. I mean, I don't see a real value of talking about anything else.
So one of the things that one of the things someone mentioned was that the package review process is very hard for getting your package in the first time. But so, as an example,
this proper thing, why it exists in the first place? Because project stuff is utterly broken. I mean, it doesn't work as it should be. I love that idea with badges and modernization, which I've been done almost in a single, but real exists are not these ones. Real exists are not adding additional badges. Real issues are, for example, I want the ability to upload a PM SRC PM somewhere and build it in one step for all existing distributions, architectures and distribution. I still didn't have this. I'd love to have an integration between Bugzilla, Git review process, but we still didn't use Fedora hosted. I'd love to see Fedora mostly hosted on GitHub. It's problematic because of some.
Well, you won't see Fedora hosted on GitHub primarily because that would be in violation of one of our 4 foundations. GitHub not being an open solution.
Yeah, so there are a lot of infrastructure things that could be made better and improved. And
yes.
So we have
There are another issues. For example, we finally found someone to
Peter?
go through all that stuff.
I would like to hear your thoughts, but you are kind of monopolizing the conversation. Why don't we have a conversation, the three of us, after the talk?
I'd love to.
I don't want to. I want to give everybody an opportunity to have their say too.
So one more thing real quick then. One of the things that I would like to see as part of the Fedora Next thing is sort of separation between some of the more lightweight packages. Like I have something that's not packaged up in Fedora. I would like to make it available to people and have it be part of the distribution. And I think that the ability to get those things in should be at a different level from I need to make a change to glibc, I want to change the file system, the kernel, and so it makes sense that those things get a really higher level of review when they're at the basic level of the OS, and then things that are packages that are added onto it, probably we can make lighter procedures there. So I think that is one of the things. And then one of the other questions was about what happens to KDE and the Razor Qt thing. This is supposed to be an additive process, so we're supposed to be we're putting some new things in Fedora that didn't exist before, but we don't want to throw out the things that are there and good, and so we would like what?
Which one? Which is the drop
So KDE, even if the desktop workstation SIG decides they're not going to base their thing on KDE, and I've been busy traveling, I haven't followed what how the discussion is going, but it's pretty likely that it's going to be a GNOME-based product, but that doesn't mean that we don't have KDE in the repository and you can't just keep on using KDE as you always have. If you use the workstation product, you get some other different things. So if you're a software developer and you come into Fedora and say, I'm going to want a desktop for my software development, oh, I see there's this product targeting me, awesome, that's what I want. But if you look at it and you're like, oh, that's not what I want, well, we still have all the other stuff in Fedora and we're not going to throw that out.
The problem with GDM, for example, people from
Right.
workstation group says that every other it's like from this product requirement it was said something like every desktop session should work with GDM, for example, which is inappropriate for KDE or Razor Qt. They don't want to work with GDM. Why this workstation group put it inside? So there's a lot of problems when you choose one direction as a main one. Sorry.
What it means is that in order to receive the tag that says you are compliant with the Fedora workstation set of requirements, you must work with GDM. It does not mean that you cannot use KDM or LightDM in Fedora.
But this is a dangerous way. You start with.
If I could. Well, again, what these three products are is really they're an assertion of a set of things that you can rely on. They're an assertion that the system that in order to be Fedora workstation or Fedora server, you can make the assumption that up to this level, these set of packages and these set of APIs and these set of interfaces are available to you. And by doing that, what we're saying is, if you are Fedora workstation, it does mean that you are using GDM. If you switch it out, you're technically not Fedora workstation, but you're still Fedora.
1 year GDM is maybe gone.
This means that workstation group is not the desktop group. So there should
There's a
be
very large overlap,
desktop
I
group,
won't lie
which is
about that.
different. Yeah. So workstation group shouldn't decide for other desktop
They're not
environments.
deciding for other desktops. If other desktops, what they're trying to leave open is the possibility that if another desktop is willing to at least provide the same set of interfaces and then their environment, then they can still be considered Fedora workstation. The first one to implement that will most likely be GNOME, but it doesn't. The idea is that it should not restrict the possibility that XFCE could still offer all the same public interfaces, or KDE, or any of them.
There's some folks that are very patient.
Yeah, that's. Thank you.
You had a question?
I have one. With the release scheme, have you thought about making, if Fedora server maybe comes only every 2 years, thought about doing more a rolling release for the main parts or the package set?
It has come up. No decision has been made at this point, although when you get right down to it, more or less, Rawhide, since we turned installable composes back on, is more or less already in a rolling release.
But Rawhide has experimental stuff, so
Yes.
that's not something you'd use on your daily machine.
Well, again, that's one. There is effort from certain sides to make Rawhide a little more stable by strongly leveraging Copr for those things that aren't stable enough for Rawhide, so that Rawhide itself maintains a level of installability, if not a guarantee of behavior. Can I get? Is there anyone else with questions? How much time do I have?
You have 4 minutes.
I have 4 minutes.
Really have time for like one more question. Anybody? Ah.
Of course.
Yeah. For me, thanks for the explanation, first of all. For me, it now sounds like you try to sharp out some products for Fedora to make up some clean targets. But what we got right now is that we got several spins and derivates. We also already got a cloud image which might need some love, but it's there, and there are still, maybe we need a server image, that's true, but why don't we keep the existing infrastructure as it is? Because one of the strengths of Fedora is the flexibility, is the amount of different flavors that is available right now.
Sure, and
so,
as of right now, we have no plans to restrict that at all.
Okay,
The only thing that might change is that they may not be promoted as prevalently on the website. It may be that the website leads the focus towards the products.
But that's the case with the GNOME spin already?
Right, well, that's not a decision that's been finalized either, but that seems likely that these three things will be right on the front page, and then the spins will still be, they're already relegated to a secondary page.
Okay.
So.
Thanks for the clarification.
All right, that's been a barrel of kittens. So thank you very much. And if you, I'll let you wrap up, but I would just say we can continue these discussions on the Fedora mailing list.
Certainly. And I fully recognize that the Fedora mailing lists can be difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff, but it is the canonical source of record for the decisions we try to make. Thank you very much.